Chapter 7, Wuxia's Mystery Branch Ability. The comparison of Wuxia's blood sample taken before and after the administration of the genetic liberation elixir showed that he had activated 14 genetic base points. Wuxia, who had been a little dejected just now, immediately felt more energetic. He vigorously stepped into the mystery branch testing hall. The results of the blood sample comparison were clear as day. The 14 genetic base points were objectively there. He had already been tested negative for all of the tests in the extreme branch. That meant that Wuxia was guaranteed to be in the mystery branch. Compared to the testing halls in the extreme branch that was equipped with a large number of testing equipment for the various extreme branch abilities, the mystery branch testing hall seemed much simpler. Wuxia had just stepped into the first room of the tunnel in the mystery branch testing hall, which was a radiation influence type testing room, when an unknown gas enveloped him. Wuxia became groggy. It might have been a few seconds or perhaps a few minutes. Wuxia had a test report in his hands when he came to his senses. After the testing, it is determined that Wuxia has not activated any radiation influence type genetic base points. The option was very thoroughly and quickly dismissed. The most famous radiation influence type ability of the mystery branch was mental disruption. It was more commonly called hypnotism. Wuxia shook his head and walked toward the sensory type testing room. He entered the room quickly and left the room even faster. It was still a negative test report. Then, Wuxia entered the superb type testing room of the mystery branch. The superb type testing room was a straight tunnel with several weird items placed on both sides. Wuxia walked through the tunnel as requested, but nothing happened. Then, Wuxia received another negative test report. Wuxia became flustered once again. There are not many subsections of the mystery branch. According to the testing order, there should still be an enlightened mind testing room in front of him. However, Wuxia did not manage to find where the enlightened mind testing room was even after he walked once around the mystery branch testing hall. Wuxia was a little confused. "Can I ask where the enlightened mind testing room is?" Wuxia proactively asked the security personnel. "The enlightened mind testing room is in room 5. Room 5. Wuxia's gaze scanned past the row of testing rooms in the mystery branch testing hall. He was still confused. There was no room 5. Outside, the security personnel added, "Outside, IDIS room 5 from rooms 1 to 40 where you were administered with the genetic liberation elixir." Wuxia froze. That was quite unexpected. It was a little startling. The mystery branch had a strong reputation. Why would the enlightened mind type testing room not have its own room, but was instead merged with the rooms used to administer the genetic liberation elixir? That was not logical. Wuxia obediently walked out of the mystery branch testing hall and toward the enlightened mind type testing room. Coincidentally, it was the room where Wuxia had been administered with the genetic liberation elixir. How is it? Which type of the mystery branch are you exactly? Are you a superb individual? Zepping and a bunch of students gathered around Wuxia when they saw him come out of the testing hall. Wuxia shook his head and pointed toward room 5. He told them that he still had to go through one test. Zepping and the rest of the students had a confused expression. Why did he have to return to the room where he took his exam previously? Did Wuxia have to be administered with another elixir? Wuxia was also very frustrated. If he was not an enlightened mind type, Wuxia would have to consider the possibility that there was a mistake with his blood comparison report. He had activated 14 genetic base points but did not fit anywhere within the extreme branch or the mystery branch. Wuxia suddenly thought about an extremely terrifying possibility. I would be dissected and examined by the Genetic Research Institute. After all, they might be able to find a new research direction if they dissected Wuxia, wouldn't they? Wuxia was very nervous. He pressed on the doorbell and expressed his intentions. The people inside got Wuxia to wait for a while. A few minutes later, a student walked out of room 5. The female researcher in room 5 immediately shouted for Wuxia to enter. It was the same female researcher. However, Wuxia, who had failed every test so far, was already feeling a little scared. "Hello, I'm here to test if I have activated any enlightened mind type genetic base points," Wuxia said. "Your previous test report and your blood sample comparison report," the female researcher said. Your blood sample comparison shows that you have activated 14 genetic base points. She looked at Zhu Tui and continued, "It looks like you did not activate any genetic base points relating to X-ray vision?" The female researcher mentioned it again. Zhu Tui, who was worried about the future, no longer had the mood to blush. All he wanted to know was if he had activated any enlightened mind-type genetic base points or not, as well as whether or not he would be dissected and studied on. "Teacher, when would we begin the test?" Zhu Tui asked. "You're so anxious." The male researcher, who was wearing a face mask, looked at Zhu Tui's handsome, tightly scrunched face. She arched her slender brows. She must have smiled. She then took out a card and wrote a few words on it. She then signed her name and placed a stamp on the card. With a flick, the card landed accurately in Zhu Tui's hands. "Yes, you activated 14 genetic base points, and they are all enlightened mind type. This is the final test report. It will be entered into the system immediately," the female researcher explained. "They are all enlightened mind type?" Zhu Tui was still a little confused when he saw the test report. He wasn't tested at all, was he? He at least felt a little faint during the radiation influence type test. He did not feel anything during this enlightened mind type test before it was completed. It was done just like that. "Do you have any other questions?" The female researcher turned her head and looked toward Zhu Tui. Zhu Tui looked at the female researcher, then glanced toward the final test report in his hand. He felt a little faint. "It's done just like that? You think I didn't go through any tests, right? What kind of tests do you want? Would it still be called the mystery branch if you can see through the tests?" The female researcher said. Zhu Tui froze. That made sense. Why would it be called the mystery branch otherwise? "Then goodbye, teacher," Zhu Tui greeted politely and was about to leave. "Wait!" The female researcher suddenly stopped Zhu Tui before he went out of the room. "This is my name card. You can ask me any questions about the enlightened mind if you intend to enroll in the Wuxia Genetic Evolution College," she offered. "Don't bother me if there's no need to. I'll blacklist you otherwise." The name card flew accurately into Zhu Tui's hand. Zhu Tui did not understand this special treatment. He didn't seem to have any friends and family of that kind. Could this be because of the small interlude just now? He felt that it was impossible after he thought about it. The female researcher once again displayed her incredible skill of reading Zhu Tui's thoughts. "There are no holes in your brain, right?" Zhu Tui shook his head in a daze. He glanced at the name card, and Zhao Soxui, Mystery Branch Institute of the Wuxia Genetic Evolution College professor. Professors, they were either old or middle-aged. Even though he could not see her face, the female researcher's voice and the youthful aura that she was exuding all suggested that she was not that old. She was such a young professor. Furthermore, she was a professor from the best college in Wuxia, the Wuxia Genetic Evolution College. It was rather startling. Zhu Tui was not a fool. Everything was possible in this great genetic era where genes could be strengthened, mutated, or evolved. He kept the name card and expressed his thanks, then left the room. Zhu Tui had just walked out of room 5 when a bunch of students and Yu Zepping surrounded him. They all stared at Zhu Tui with an expecting gaze. "How is it? Are you in the mystery branch?" "Yes, it's the mystery branch, 14 genetic base points." Zhu Tui waved the final test report in his hand. Cheng Mo, Tang Ting, and the rest of the students stepped forward and gathered around Zhu Tui as they cheered. They were elated. It was as if they were in the mystery branch themselves. All of the stress Zhu Tui felt disappeared amidst the students' smiles and laughter. Zhu Tui also smiled. Yu Zepping also smiled when he witnessed the scene. However, there was an imperceptible bitterness behind his smile. It might be the last time in their lives that these students would be smiling this happily, this innocently. Yu Zepping stole a glance at Zhu Tui's final test report while the students were playing and tossing it around. The corner of his lips suddenly twitched. To think that it is the enlightened mind type. As a man in the academe, Yu Zepping had some understanding of the mysterious enlightened mind type. The enlightened mind type seemed to be more focused on research. "Oh, yes, little Tui, just what exactly is the ability of your mystery branch?" Tang Ting suddenly asked. In reality, Zhu Tui was also considering that question. "You should go register your final test report quickly now that you have gotten it. Collect the instructional guide of your respective ability after that," Yu Zepping instructed Zhu Tui. Then he turned to the others and said, "The same goes for the rest of you. You have to know that the 3 months after being administered with the genetic liberation elixir is the time when you will experience constant enhancement. You must not be tardy during these 3 months. From this point on, Yu Zeping got into a nagging mode. You have to adhere to the instructional guide strictly from tomorrow until the time you report to your college a few days later. You must start training based on the direction of your genetic base points. It'll all depend on you." Yu Zeping's tone suddenly became a little choked. It caused 2 female students to tear up after they heard him. The rest of the students had to join a queue. The mystery branch that Zhu Tui headed to had no line. The instructional guide of the enlightened mind type was thin, extremely thin. Other than a general summary of the enlightened mind, the guide did not provide him with any way to train his ability. Of course, Zhu Tui still did not know what his mystery branch ability really was, other than the faint metallic stench of blood in his mouth. Zhu Tui still had many doubts in his heart even after he got out of the Genetic Research Institute. He also felt indescribable pressure. He did not wait for Cheng Mo, Tang Ting, and the rest of the students who were still queuing and went home alone. Zhu Tui mulled over a question along the way: just what was the ability of the 14 mystery branch genetic base points he activated? Zhu Tui did not have an answer even after he reached home. He looked at the name card of the female professor, and Zhao Saxui. Zhu Tui fought back the urge to call her. Of course, it wouldn't have helped if he called her. She was still presiding over the examination in the Genetic Research Institute. Her communication device must still be turned off. Zhu Tui returned home safely. Zhu Jiangguo and Zhang Shuli were extremely happy. A parent had received news of their child experiencing a genetic breakdown in the afternoon. The parents' group chat had exploded. Zhu Tui activating 14 genetic base points that were all from the mystery branch was not as important. Of course, Zhu Jiangguo was surprised when he heard that the genetic base points that Zhu Tui activated were from the mystery branch enlightened mind type. Zhu Tui returned to his room not long after he finished his meal. He tapped gently on his communication device, and a virtual keyboard projection appeared on his study table. Zhu Tui preferred using the keyboard projection to the voice input function. Zhu Tui quickly searched the web for information using a variety of search engines. Unfortunately, the current internet had reached an indescribable level of power and convenience. However, the censorship of information had also reached an unprecedented level. It was especially so for sensitive information. To put it simply, the information regarding the mystery branch on the internet was all things that Zhu Tui had already known. Zhu Tui could not find anything he wanted to learn about the mystery branch, much less the uncommon enlightened mind type. Zhu Tui scoured the net until 1 in the morning before having no choice but to give up. It looks like I have to contact Professor N tomorrow. A professor from the Mystery Branch Institute of a Genetic Evolution College should be able to give Zhu Tui a little advice, right? Zhu Tui washed up, took off his shirt, and got onto the bed. Zhu Tui sat cross-legged out of habit and began his evening meditation. Something was wrong. Zhu Tui knew that his eyes were still tightly shut. However, the area in front of his eyes had become bright. He gradually saw a human figure. It was a human figure that was sitting with his legs crossed. The area around the figure was pulsing. It was as if countless rays of light were coursing around the figure, making the entire scene look blurry. There were only 14 weak spots of light on the head of the human figure. Where did he come from? Zhu Tui was shocked. He opened his eyes to search for the figure. It was gone. The figure appeared again when he closed his eyes and entered the meditative state. Zhu Tui tried searching for the figure for some time before he had a sudden realization. The person he saw might have been himself. It felt unreal.